Welcome everybody to Safety First, Training Youth for Success on the Farm. My name is Peter Sikanda. I am a policy analyst here at the OFA, and I also am the current chair at the Canadian Agricultural Safety Association. This is the second webinar in our collaboration with the Canadian Agricultural Human Resources Council and the Canadian Agricultural Safety Association. This webinar is oriented mostly towards employees, youth and young workers on the farm. Our last one, Getting Started, Hiring Students for Farm Jobs, should be posted shortly on the OFA website. And that one was oriented more towards helping farm employers understand their responsibilities when hiring youth and young workers on the farm. Safety is clearly a priority for us here at the OFA, and we are pleased to welcome Victoria from CARC and Dean from CASA to help us get some more information out to young workers so that they can have an enjoyable and safe work experience on the farm. I will pass it over to Victoria, who will start us off this afternoon.
Hello everyone. Are you able to see my slides? That's great. Well, thank you for having me. I'm Victoria Schuler, Manager of HR Services with Canadian Agricultural Human Resource Council. And I've been with CARC team for 2.5 years. If you're wondering where my accent is from, I'm Ukrainian national, was born and grew up in Ukraine and lived in Canada for 10 years. I'm based in Saskatchewan. My father-in-law comes from a family farm in White Bear, Saskatchewan. So I'm going to talk to you about training of youth for success on the farm, some tips for youth and their families, and also for the employers, especially when you're hiring young people. Just a quick introduction of CARC. We're a national nonprofit organization, and we are focused on addressing human resource issues that are nowadays faced by agricultural businesses across Canada. Our organization is led by industry stakeholders. We are also known for our research in agricultural labor market information and labor market focused. And we provide different solutions and tools for employers and HR. We have Agri-HR Toolkit. We have a number of training in Agri-HR for employers as well. Our vision is Canada's agriculture, food and beverage, manufacturing sectors, labor skills experience severe chronic labor and skills shortages, and while growing one of Canada's largest employment and economic sector. And a national actionable roadmap will create the desired workforce of the future that addresses immediate labor gaps and systematic issues. And our mission is to research, develop, and communicate solutions to human resources issues identified by Canadian agriculture. So today, I'm going to talk about legal matters and employer obligations. If you're starting your first job, congratulations. Also, we talk a little bit on HR policies. There will be some tips for employers, what you need to consider when you're hiring young people, and also importance on onboarding, orientation, and training, including tips for families, students, and employers. And Dean is going to talk about health and safety training. So in Ontario, 4 Ontario workplace laws apply to all employers and workers under provincial jurisdiction, including farm workers. And compliance ensures protection for both employers and employees. And this Occupational Health and Safety Act, Employment Standards Act, or ESA, and Workplace Safety and Insurance Act. Occupational Health and Safety Act sets the health and safety standards and requirements for employers and workers in the workplace. Employment Standard Act includes rules around minimum wage, hours of work, and more. And Workplace Safety and Insurance Act provides injured workers with disability benefits, health care, and other services and assist in an early and safe return to work. At the same time, there are specific regulations that are applied to agriculture. So in Employment Standard Act, farm workers are excluded from certain provisions, such as hours of work or overtime pay. And for Occupational Health and Safety Act, farming operations have provincial guidelines for health and safety that include operating equipment and tractors and common hazards. This is something that you would like to look at. But let's just consider and start with the basics, like who is an employee on the farm? An employee is anyone who provides labor on a farm in exchange for a wage or money. And it could be your relatives, friends, neighbors, students, and it doesn't matter if they're employed full-time, part-time, just on call, few hours a week. If there is a wage and money involved, then this is considered an employee, and all the obligation and compliance covers this. So let's talk about minimum age requirements. Minimum age for agricultural work in Ontario is 14 years old for non-hazardous farm work, like hand harvesting crops, planting, sorting produce, general maintenance. For 16 years and older, you can start doing hazardous work like operating heavy machinery, handling livestock, working with pesticides. Again, there are some exemptions. There are lots of exemptions in agriculture. Family-owned farms where the student is a direct family member may have different rules, and also work in greenhouses may have additional safety restrictions. For the work restrictions for students under 18, you cannot work during school hours if you're enrolled in a secondary school, cannot work more than 48 hours per week without written permission, and must have at least 30-minute break every 5 consecutive hours of work. As for the safety training requirements, I'm sure Dean will talk more about that, but all students must receive proper training before starting any hazardous tasks and must have a protective gear, gloves, masks, helmet that must be provided when required. For the student worker rights, the employer must meet minimum wage standards, and it's $17.20, effective October 1st, 2024, unless the student is working under the registered co-op or internship program, and must be provided with proper breaks and safe working conditions, cannot be forced to work overtime without consent, and as we talked earlier, employers must comply with both Employment Standard Acts and Occupational Health and Safety Act. So for the hours of work and overtime rules, there is a standard maximum work is 48 hours unless written agreement allows for more. Again, like as an exemption, no overtime pay requirement for agricultural employees, including students, a 30-minute break every 5 hours, and daily and weekly rest period must be observed. For the termination rules, agricultural employees who work for less than 13 weeks do not qualify for termination notice, and employees who work 13 and more weeks continuously may be entitled to termination notice or pay. But most important right, it's safety, and it's the right to refuse, the right to know, and the right to participate. This is the first thing you need to know when you're starting your first job. And the right to know is if you have the right to know, we'll start with the right to refuse. You have a right to refuse work that you believe is dangerous to either your own health or safety or of your co-workers. And that could include anything like using any farm equipment that you haven't been trained in a way that is inappropriate, or like working in confined space, or if you experience workplace violence or harassment. For example, you're working in a greenhouse and you've been asked to balance on some buckets on uneven ground or operate machinery that you're unfamiliar. So you have the right to say, no, thanks, I need a safer solution to be able to perform this work. And legally, your employer cannot retaliate against your decision. This might be feel comfortable for you first. And again, the easiest, you need to be easy, and you need to feel that you're able to do that. The right to know, you have the right to know about any potential hazards, machinery, large animals, exposure to substances such as pesticides, and the right to be informed and instructed on how to protect your health and safety. And the right to participate, you have the right to be a part of the process of identifying and resolving workplace health and safety issues. Another employer obligations that it's good to know, especially when you're starting your first job, is employers must keep written records of your name, address, employment start date. Employer must establish a regular pay period and a regular pay day for each employee. You must be provided with a wage statement. You must be provided with a written notice of termination or termination pay if you qualified. And you must be provided with job protected leaves of absence. And qualified employees must be provided with a severance pay like for the employment that was served, if qualified. But let's talk about employers and hiring young people. You're probably familiar with like generations, Gen Z, millennials. So just a bit of a theory about generation cohorts. Some people think that generation cohorts are those like 15-year time spans between the births. That's a lot of people think. And actually, like the generational cohorts are based on historical occurrences and different events that happened during the childhood and early adult years. And that help you to like understand the world. And it does make sense because things that happen to you as a child impact how your lenses are formed and how you see the world as an adult. And the generations that we're talking today, like Gen Z or millennials, is a North American concept. If you're working like with foreign workers or newcomers, the generational cohorts might be different. But if we talk about generation Gen Z, this is those young people that were born between 1997 and 2010. It makes me feel really old when I see resumes of those people. But what is important for them? And the diversity is a big factor, and they've seen it all. They've seen the first Black president, they've seen same-sex marriages. Nothing is a big deal. They will likely be the first generation in North America when Caucasians become a minority in the workplace. They care about security, stability, physical and philological safety, and diversity. And very often it's more important that the money and the pay. Their communication preferences, they live in the virtual world, right? They like video, they use snapshot. At the same time, when it comes to the workplace, they like those face-to-face attention. And that's because their Gen X parents, who are very busy building their careers, likely didn't have time to like give too much face-to-face attention. And another thing, they spend average of 3 hours on the phone. So like phone is their extension. And they will be clashing with millennials. And also like there might be like young people like that is called Gen Alpha. These are the people born between 2010 and 2014. And nobody knows yet like what their values are. They are very much affected by COVID pandemic. So this will be probably subject for a new research on the generation. And if you are an employer hiring Gen Z, here are some tips on so-called Gen Z's HR policies based on what they are. Phone use policy. They use phone 3 hours a day. So I know a lot of employers are getting frustrated when their employees are on the phone. So to prevent that, just to try to develop like a basic phone use policy as a part of your HR policies. And what it could include? It could include restrict personal use during work hours, like we don't want any distractions, so nobody's using phone during work hours. Or like you're not using phone when you're operating equipment. The phone can be used during designated breaks. Or we can also encourage to put the phones on silent, or vibrate mode, especially if you have all those notifications coming. You can ask your employee to activate a voicemail. Young people do not use voicemails, but in this case, like they won't be able to miss an important phone call. Private conversation, encourage them to do it in a private space. And also, if you are developing such a policy, address potential issues. Establish a clear process, what is going to happen when employees that are using their phones inappropriate and they're not following your policy. Another thing that is important is a social media policy. Do you want your farm to be all over TikTok, like inside of your barn or your equipment? So probably not. So that's why a social media policy may help. Like what you can focus on is describe which information is confidential. For example, I worked with a farmer here in Saskatchewan, and he didn't want his employees to take pictures of all the combines and all the equipment and post them on their private Facebook pages because he didn't want his neighbors to know what kind of equipment he has, at least before the harvest is sitting. So just describe what is confidential, what is not. Another good tip is think before you post. So emphasize that it is important to think before you're posting anything and consider what young people are putting online. And also describe and define what is considered as an appropriate content, like what you don't want employees to be posting. At the same time, with social media, it could be good for your employer branding as well, if employers are posting about the farm and it comes in a positive light. Another thing, and we mentioned that about Gen Z, equity, diversity, and inclusion policy. This is something that is important for young people. So in your policy, just emphasize your commitment on equity, diversity, and inclusion, zero tolerance approach to bullying, harassment, discrimination, and outline why the policy means to you, to the farm, and why is it important. And the last policy, like teenagers will likely be late, right? So just outline the late coming or attendance policy. Like your working hours, specify the official start and end time. Yes, it is not always important. It is not always possible, especially during seeding or harvest time, but specify the standard with some variations. And define what constitutes of being late, like arriving more than 5 minutes or arriving more than 15 minutes after scheduled start time. Define what is constituted as an absence, missing work without, when there is a missing work without pay. Consider the grace period, how this should be reported, outline whom employees should contact if they're going to miss the day or if they're going to be late, and also consequences of unexcused absence or tardiness. Like what is going to happen? Is it going to be a verbal, written warning, suspension without pay, termination? Outline the rules before you start. And the next, we're going to talk about training a bit. I know we mentioned that on the webinar last week, but just an onboarding, and this is important for young people to understand as well. When you're starting your job, this is just a formal definition of onboarding by Society of Human Resource Management. So it is the process of integrating a new employee with a company and its culture, as well as getting a new hire the tools and information needed to become a productive member of the team. And what I would like to focus, compliance, health, and safety is important, but for someone who is getting the first job, it's also important to socialize and to get the right work habits and feel engaged and feel accepted by the team as well. So again, a bit of history. So the onboarding, the term to get on the board is often used by the aviation industry. and it's originated in 1990s. And first it was used for upper management. And it is more than just orientation, because orientation usually like covers day one in the paperwork. It's the process of bringing new employees into the organization, including the paperwork, safety and performance knowledge, skills, and making them connected and feeling a part of a team. There are so-called 4 levels of onboarding, like 4 C's on onboarding: compliance, clarity, culture, and connection. And a lot of employers, especially if you're hiring part-time, seasonal staff, like are focused on compliance and forget about clarity, culture, and connection. So with the compliance, we just do the basic compliance with regulations and policies, all the basic training, everything that is need to be done. But at the same time, it's also good to keep in mind such things as clarity. Clarify the job, clarify the performance, clarify your expectations. It's important also to integrate the new employee into the culture. What are your values? What are your traditions? What are the norms on the farm? How do we address each other? How do we work with the conflict? And also, it's important to get new employees to feel connected, to build the work relationship, finding the place, and gaining the commitment. Usually, like onboarding is divided into like 3 phases: day 1, day 2, day 3. And on day 1, like the very first is the employee gets into the office. We go through all the required documentations. We introduce the employee to the farm. We start with the basic safety training, workplace and housing orientation if you provide accommodation, and basic work procedure training. But at the same time, it's important to not overwhelm the new employee, especially if you're hiring young people. And with the day 1, I would just probably, I would advise, like, try to imagine that you are like arriving to your farm for the first time and you've never been here. So what do you do? Where do you park? What is the start time? What is important for the job? Where is the bathroom? Where is the lunchroom? What people wear here? And when are the breaks? So this is like a very basic and obvious questions that you won't even think about, but these are important, like for someone who is starting the job, and especially for someone who is starting the first job. So for example, another, like, don't forget to share like key phone numbers, right? Like whom to contact, like your phone number, the phone number of the supervisor. Again, like go through the cell phone use policy. And what is also what could be also helpful, like with the first day and like answering this question, is maybe talk to the employee that you just recently hired and ask employee to put together like a checklist of the list of questions that they think is important on the first day and that you may miss. So, and if you have this orientation checklist, it would be much easier and much helpful, and the process will be the same for every new employee that is starting. On the day 2, we focus more on the work procedures and safety. We review all the policies, and that's when we start getting more engaged and like socialize. And on the day 3, again, like finish the review of the process, complete the training, and like evaluate like what else is needed. This is just like a basic kind of areas that is important on the training, like about the farm, like it's like where is lunchroom, where is the washroom. Some employers use like a Google snapshot, like from on the Google map, and like they have like a little map on the farm. Or if it's a grain farm, what are the locations of the field? Like some fields have funny names that, like, I've been in this farm for years, and for a new person, they may not know where is that red barn is. About the job, again, like clarify the job expectations and the job performance factors, legal matters, health and safety, your benefits, and the work procedures. So this is just the basics. And again, what is important to keep in mind, especially when like hiring young people, is this is the first job. They may have the work habits that are different from what is on your farm if they come from the farming background, or this might be just the first job on the farm and they may not be aware of what to do and how things are done. So, but at the same time, if they feel valued, if they feel encouraged, it's a good start of the career. And I'm going to finish with just like a quote of Benjamin Franklin. Tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, and involve me and I learn. And this is something to remember, especially when we are hiring young people. And this is the end of my presentation. I'm going to pass it on to Dean.
Thanks, Victoria. I'll pass it over to Dean in a moment. I just wanted to pop in and say I fully agree. My experience with the Employment Standards Act can be that it's very complicated, especially when it gets to the farm workplace. But it's important that whenever a new worker comes onto the farm, that there are certain things that employees are covered for, and if you have your employer saying, "Oh, no, 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 you're not covered by that. Don't worry about it." Like that should be the red flag to say, "Well, I need to look into that a little bit further," and make sure that they're not mistaken on that. Dean, looking forward to your discussion. I would love to hear more about the safety side of things. Like, if you are a new worker coming onto the farm, what would your perspective be coming onto the farm and making sure that you know that your employer is following the rules and that they are providing you with a safe workplace? I'll put that as sort of a umbrella statement. So I'll turn it over to you. Thanks.
Hopefully I can answer some of the questions, Peter. It's kind of a short period of time to compress it all, but there certainly are a lot of resources for people to go to. And one of the things that Victoria talked about was his onboarding. And I think that's a very important thing. Has someone got my slides, or maybe not?
I may go without slides really quickly if you want, Dean. If you can do that, I'll sort of move along, Rebecca. And I don't have PowerPoint, so I'm not able to project and pull it up. All right, just give me 1 second.
Dean, you also look frozen.
Yes, he does. I'll also just say that OFA has an online store where we have caution go slowly signs and also child safety vests. So if anyone is interested in that, I will put a link to the store in the chat.
Anything. And with the charity, we actually do an awful lot of good with it. It's been in place now for about 12 years, and some things like our grain safety and back to ag and some of our child programs are paid for out of that fund.
We did miss the beginning of that, Dean. You were froze for a bit.
Oh, I was froze.
You were froze.
Which part? From where?
You just started like 5 seconds ago.
Go. Canadian Agriculture Safety Association is who I'm representing. And I'm on the board, been on it for a number of years. Peter Secanda is actually our current chair of the national organization. Our reason, raison d'etre, is to make sure that everyone can go home safely working in Canadian agriculture. And I've worked about 25 years in farm safety, originally the Farm Safety Association in Ontario, and more recently the Workplace Safety and Prevention Services, which are your designated entity within the Ministry of Labor and WSIB for agriculture farm safety. They have an excellent material on their site, and I've got a bit of references at the end. The other thing I did mention is that we do have a national charity. It's called the Farm Safe Foundation. We do issue charitable receipts, etc. But our grain safety programs, our child safety programs, the professional agriculture safety days is paid for out of that, and some other programs. So just to be aware of. So if I can get the next slide. I do want to be aware of time, and I'd rather answer questions than talk. So next slide. So hiring new persons. As Victoria was saying, I think one of the most important things actually is onboarding. She did mention the legislation and the requirements that are there. The Employment Standards Act, the Occupational Health and Safety Act, and the Workplace Safety Insurance Act are the three primary ones. Actually, an awful lot, as Victoria mentioned, our Education Act determines sort of age of being able to work, hours of work for children, and those kind of things. They're not in our Occupational Health and Safety Act. They're actually in the Education Act. So that's our history. One thing that every new worker should have is basic awareness training. This is in any job in the province. Needs to include those workplace duties, responsibilities. The employer, the supervisor, and the worker, all three have duties and responsibilities in the workplace, and you should make yourself aware of that. The employer should help make you aware of those things. You should also know about the role of the Ministry of Labor, WSIB, and your designated entity, Workplace Safety and Prevention Services. If you're having any trouble in the workplace, the employer is not helping you out, find out how to do things safely. If you think things aren't being done safely, that's one of the resources. You could check with any of these resources, actually. You have to be told about the common workplace hazards. Are there manure? Is there liquid manure? Do you have issues around hydrogen sulfide gas because of a liquid manure? Do you have tower silos? Is there a silo gas issue? Do you have pesticides stored on site? Are there areas that are considered confined spaces? These kind of things the employer has to make you aware of. He has to go through common workplace hazardous material information system, identifying what logos are, the emblems are, materials, how to handle, what to do in the case of poisoning or a spill. You don't need to get full women's training by your employer, but if you're working with a product, you need to know how to use that product safely, whether it's propane, whether it's WD-40, whether it's materials used for cleaning, dairy equipment in the milk house. You need to be aware of all of those products that you're using. And you need to be made aware of things like occupational diseases, which you could be exposed to. Common one in the news right now would be avian influenza. And at certain times, it's probably better to take some respiratory protection when working around there. Another occupational illness would be hearing loss. So being told where and when to wear proper hearing protection and having it obviously available. One of the things that obviously I think is very important is keeping track of your record training. This doesn't mean binders and binders and binders. It can be as simple as I've suggested a checklist. Go down your checklist, check it off as you're going with the employee. Victoria mentioned this too. It also makes sure that if you hire someone a month ago and you hire someone now, you're going down through the same checklist of material. And when you get done it, put a date on it, make a record, put it in your little notepad you put in your top pocket. If the employee has their cell phone with them, have them take a picture of the checklist, a future date, you can go, remember I told you. Those records are very important for both the employer. You go home from your first day of work and go, what did you learn? And you go, nothing. And what you could do is show this checklist and show your parents what you actually learned that day. Parents should always discuss with the employer before the child starts, and when the child starts their job, they need to make sure they talk back with their parents. Relationship is very important with the first employer, and this is a very good opportunity for young workers to really start their personal self empowerment and asking questions and going forward. So next slide. Let's get more onto what new things are. So hiring a new worker. I expand this not from a first-time worker. I think it's anyone who hasn't done a job for 12 months is new. You're coming back a second year. You're coming from a different farm, or it's your first job on the farm, period. These people all need to be refreshed, taught, and supervised. The example I use is you maybe have driven a combine or someone's driven a combine for 10 years. But when they pull that combine out of the barn the first time in August, they're not driving it the same way it was when they put it back in the barn. You need to refamiliarize yourself. And the other thing is that if it's someone coming back a second year, maybe you bought a different piece of equipment. So there is a level of training that needs to be done there. Basic points to keep in mind. It's not your dad's farm. If you're a child who's on the farm, been on a pig farm all your life, and now you're going to go work for the guy across the road, his equipment might be different. His procedures might be different. There may be idiosyncrasies around the manure handling system. He may have a green tractor. Your dad might have a red one. Dealing with livestock. You might have come from a dairy farm and now you're working with swine. So don't just because you're a farm kid doesn't mean you can walk into a different farm workplace and be totally familiar with it. So these are the things the employer needs to be aware of, but it's also good for the worker to be aware and ask questions. In a new workplace, the worker's not always aware of the policies and procedures. Victoria covered this stuff off pretty good. But you also, as safety, you need to make them aware of hazards, pinch points, wrap points, crush points. Any of these hazards and dangers you need to be made aware of. And the dangers can include things such as noise, gases, dusts, eye protection. So it's not just that traumatic accident. Some of them are the less traumatic, but they can actually be lifelong accidents. Losing your hearing is permanent and it can last your lifetime. Learn to be aware of the emergency procedures is a very important thing on first day in the workplace. Who are the first aiders in the workplace? I recommend everybody get a first aid certificate at some point in time. But if you don't have your first aid certificate, know where you're going, who you're going to. Is it the wife in the house? Is it your supervisor? Is it someone in the front office in the greenhouse? Where are the first aid kits? First aid is critical when someone is especially bleeding or having breathing problems. So having the first aid kit, the first aider, and getting them on site. Knowing such simple things as where the phone is and what the fire code is. So you could dial up the fire code on your cell phone, dial fire department on your cell phone and tell them to come out, but do you know the fire code? So everyone needs to know that or know where to at least locate the fire code so that you can tell the fire department where to go. And in some counties of the province, make sure you know how to translate that, because some counties still have more than one location with the same fire code. It goes back very historic, but they're going to have to say it's on Bob's Road, fire code this, or that type of thing. Who to contact, especially if the employer is off location. That's a very important thing. So is it your supervisor? Is it your employer? Who do you contact? All sort of first day type things, second day, but before you really start to do heavy things. So next slide, let's talk about a bit more of tasks and training. For anyone training in the farm, the first thing to do is you don't do it quick. You don't go over there and do this job. You need to start slow, ease people into work. Remember that, and I'm going to try and be polite here, but this is a young person who's been sitting in school for 8 months, and you can't expect them to come in and clean a box stall for an entire day. Just physically, they're going to get overworked. Mentally, it's not going to be challenging enough. And you know what'll probably happen is the worker won't come back the second day, or you're going to phone up the employer and go, I'm not doing this for the whole summer. So you need to ease them in, change the job, give them some ability, start them off. And the idea would be maybe start them off in 2 or 3 different parts of the farm so they learn different things. And but each time you do it, you need to start with a training, you need to demonstrate, and then most importantly, you should be supervised. And as a worker, be aware of the fact that if someone's watching you do the job, they're making sure that A, you do the job right so you're not going to break or hurt anything, and or keep the quality up of the produce. Let's say you're handling fruit or vegetables. They don't want product to get damaged. But the other thing they're doing is they're making sure that you're doing it correctly, to make sure that you're not taking shortcuts, that you're not, for example, lifting incorrectly, or you're exposing yourself too close to a pinch point on a sorting line, or these types of things. So as a supervisor, they're going to correct you and take you back to the process they trained and demonstrated. It's not picking on you. They want you to make sure you're doing the job right. They want to make sure you can do the job all summer long. The best example I can think of is I remember several people I know who've gone out and done tree planting in Western Canada, and after about 2 weeks on the job, they've blown their knee out because they're not stamping the tree into the ground, the seedling into the ground correctly, and they blow their knee out. And for the rest of the summer, they don't have a summer job because they're sitting in a chair with a brace on their knee. But they weren't doing it as they were trained to have done it. And so it's actually poor supervision and poor employee following the instructions. Make sure that young workers are physically and mentally able to do jobs. People tend to daydream if they get doing a job often. That's one of the problems with having headsets on, is they listen to music and they don't listen to things around them. You need to make sure that you can pay attention. Some of the best people I've ever seen driving tractor are like 12 and 14-year-olds. Some of the worst are 16 and 18-year-olds. And the reason is the 16 and 18-year-olds are mind wandering and doing things differently, and they figure they know how to drive a tractor and everything's fabulous and wonderful, whereas the younger ones are concentrating and focusing on doing the job. But if you're focusing and concentrating, you can't do it all day long. And if you're not paying attention, you shouldn't be doing it all day long. So as a worker, you should be conscious of these, and your employer, your supervisor should be aware of it also. So we can switch. I think I've only got a couple more slides here, so I'll try and keep time going. When you're hiring new people, these will be expectations of young people, new workers on the farm. You need to be told, as Victoria was said, what the expectations are, what the limits are, and what the rules are. And one of the biggest ones is no horseplay. Horseplay can feel like it's having fun. You can fool around on an ATV, fool around on a tractor, do things, slam doors, startle people. But the worst case example I'll say is someone horseplaying in a McDonald's and they slip and the person puts their hand into the deep fryer. Think of what worse could happen on a farm, and the same thing could happen to you. So no horseplay, and an employer shouldn't allow horseplay to continue. Your expectations. Victoria mentioned this also. What is the phone usage? When are the breaks? What are the hours of the day? Phone, one of the worst things is it's the same thing as driving distracted. Using the phone in a tractor is the same thing. Driving down the road and texting at the same time is actually just as chargeable as it is in a car. But that lack of focus can happen in the middle of the field if you're raking hay and you start texting on your phone. I've heard several cases of people driving into drainage ditches at the end of the field because they just had one more word to type in on a text. So respect those expectations and manage your phone usage as it is anticipated. Respect no-go zones. Employers always will tell you there's no-go zones, but they also need to follow those rules too. The biggest ones on a farm tend to be going into confined spaces, dealing with areas where there's hazardous gases, atmospheres, working at heights. If someone says don't climb up the silo without someone being around, don't do it. Some of the other ones that are in no-go zones would be open manure pits. What about going into a livestock pen with an animal that is not very person friendly? Going to a pen full of bulls could be just fine if you know what you're doing, but if you don't, as the last point here is, never turn your back on either a bull or a heifer. Pigs are really bad too because they hit you below the waist, and people tend to fall, and everything around a pig pen is either cement or metal, and so you end up with a lot of head injuries and a lot of broken hips. All the animals that we have on farms are vegetarians. They're not carnivores, so they are animals of prey, whether it be chickens or horses or cows or pigs, and they tend to startle easily. This goes back to the horseplay. Banging a pen door could make a horse jump, could startle, and they do two things. They fight, shouldn't be light, or they flight and they run. So walk up behind a cow and the cow doesn't know where you are or who you are, and you touch them on the rump, the cow will probably politely tap you back. But if the cow's aware of it and his ears have acknowledged that you're there, you're probably much better off. So learning how to walk around animals, never wrap a lead around your hand. I don't know how many people have had major arms and shoulder injuries and head injuries from wrapping a lead around their hand and the animal takes off. These are all things that as a new worker around livestock, you need to be aware of. Vehicle movements. I know when I was much younger and doing my first job on the farm, my uncle, he told me I only knew one speed, which was fast. Lawnmowers need to be kept a certain distance away from open water, slopes, roadways, hidden dangers. Always follow the rules of the road. And if you're on ATVs and doing a job where you're not focusing on riding the ATV, but you're looking at cattle, looking at an irrigation line, looking at something, that's when people hit potholes and get thrown off ATVs. Half our injuries with ATVs are head injuries. So follow whatever rules are expected and don't use the equipment to its highest speed. Next slide. So I'm just going to go down through a couple other things that any worker should be aware of. I would recommend proper footwear. If you're around heavy animals, wear steel toes. If you're operating heavy equipment, please wear steel toes. But I would say the minimum requirement is make sure you don't have open toes. So no Crocs, no sandals, no flip-flops. Those are all not proper footwear, especially on uneven ground or slippery ground like we have on farms. Gloves, certain jobs require gloves. Eyewear, and I would include sun protection in there, sunglasses. If you're working outdoor all day long, get a pair of proper fitting sunglasses. Loose clothing. The worst ones I can think of is things like hoodies with strings. And it gets caught in moving equipment, and all of the equipment we have in farming is unforgiving. It's got way more horsepower than we can fight. So if your clothing gets caught, your hair gets caught, your hands get caught, it's proper gear is important. Jewelry is also important. Worst case scenario, hitting a starter on a tractor with your ring. But jewelry gets caught in equipment, and again, it doesn't just pop off nicely. And if you're anywhere around food, vegetables and those kind of things, jewelry can fall into the food, and then it ends up going down the food chain. So it's not good for the consumer. Hearing protection. Number one long-term cost for workplace safety prevention services is hearing loss. Working in turkey barns, feeding time, decibel levels higher than jet engines. Similar type things in around swine, especially young swine, at inoculating times, being around grinding equipment, all those things. Hearing protection, protect it, because once it's gone, doesn't come back. Sun protection. I don't know how many people have ended up with issues, whether it being severe sunburns and or later in life having cancer problems because they haven't properly protected themselves. Proper lifting. There's nothing worse than a bad back the rest of your life. So take care of your back, protect it, especially if you haven't been that physical. Beware of women's labeling. So if you do see a skull and crossbones on a label, if you see, those types of things, a flame on a label, maybe double check and ask your supervisor or your employer the proper ways to work with it. Those labels are there. They're called warning labels for a reason. So be aware of what to do and how to do, where to find the information. Hazardous atmospheres, confined spaces, and heights. We do have some unforgivable gases and unforgiving gases in agriculture. Hydrogen sulfide, carbon monoxide are two of the worst. They're not only are they oxygen displacing, they're also poisons. You can have carbon dioxide produced in silos, which again displaces oxygen, and it's the low oxygen that drops you initially. But with the poisonous ones like hydrogen sulfide, it actually paralyzes your breathing system, and you're one mouthful and you're done. So understand when people say be cautious around them. Confined spaces, I don't know how many years we have people trapped in grain bins. Never work in a grain bin alone, never work in a grain bin without someone observing. It's easy to say, but never work in a grain bin. Never work in a grain bin without someone else around or with equipment moving, because it's the slowest piece of equipment going, but it's the fastest when you're not looking. Heights is the same way. I think that's about all I've got time for. I saw there's a couple questions popping up, so we may have to answer them. Good resources, the Canadian Agriculture Research Safety Association. They actually have free online learning for this month. So if you go there, there are several videos you can get. Workplace Safety and Prevention Services, they will provide everyone with good training and going. The Federation actually has their own good checklists and some other materials that Peter's got on their website. And the Ministry of Labor, Training and Skills Development, they've got some very good stuff specific for farming operations. And Almafra has some very good materials too. So with that, Peter, I'd like to hand it back to either you or Joanne. I'm not sure who.
Go ahead, Peter. There is, you may want to say a few things, but there are some chat questions too. But...
Yeah, so just before we get into that, thank you very much, Dean and Victoria, for those presentations. Excellent information as always. I just, from my seat at the OFA, when I think about things from the employee side, I just wanted to highlight that under the Occupational Health and Safety Act, everyone has the right to refuse unsafe work. It's a workplace right. It cannot be taken away. This is really important. And also it can be really, really scary to do, especially as a young worker, new to a workplace, new to a whole new set of doing things, to say to a supervisor, no, I'm not doing that. I don't feel safe. So how you refuse unsafe work can be done well, and it can be done not so well. But if you are a parent or a young worker, this is something to discuss and maybe even think about ahead of time, practice how you might go about discussing workplace safety concerns with your employer or your supervisor. Asking questions in a way that's constructive and not simply saying, no, I'm not doing that, but you do have that right to refuse unsafe work. And there's, unfortunately, I do go through a lot of this, the workplace injuries and incidents on farms, and a lot of that can be solved through proper training and through workers asking questions, and in the worst cases, refusing to do the work that they're being asked to do if they believe it is unsafe. So I just wanted to highlight that because it's something that is really important to me, and I'll pass it over to you, Joanne, for any of the questions that we might have.
And just to follow up with that, your employer should be very, very happy that you are bringing this to their attention, because the last thing they want is an issue on their farm. So if you do not feel comfortable doing that job, whether it's just yourself doesn't feel comfortable and safe doing it, or whether it may be no one of your age or should be doing it, they should be happy that you're coming to them, because that could avoid an issue in the future. So there was a question: what if employee does not want to take a 30-minute break every 5 hours?
Yeah, employee, right? Like it's not. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. That's fine. If, at the same time, like think about yourself, right? Like you walked for 5 hours straight. Maybe a 30 or 15 minutes break will be helpful. Like use the washroom, have some water. So you can continue walking, but like think about safety first, and maybe like walk for like extra hour of 45 minutes to finish like planting a field. But like if you get tired and you can get into an accident, it's going to be worse.
That's good, thank you. There was a little bit of a question around 911 number and, you know, what actually is that? Because I think, and that came up when you were saying that there are multiple numbers within some counties, which I did
Mhm.
put some information in the chat, but if there's anything more to that, maybe you want to.
It's that rural address number it's the laneway marker for businesses and residents that are at the end. If you don't know the number and you call the fire department and you're on a cell phone, they can find you, but it may take them several hours to turn on the GPS locator on the phone and find you. You want them to get to the location as quick as possible. So knowing that code and giving them code, not telling that you're, a mile down side road 4 west of highway X, the fire department is kind of in a guess mode. So if you can make that detail much better, much finer, that critical time of getting especially EMS or fire to your farm is very important.
Yeah, and so there's no confusion. That's the number that is at the end of the laneway.
Yeah, a little green sign with white numbers on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to follow up on that last question as well, under the Employment Standards Act, you are as an employee, you're not covered by the time of work and break provisions. Does that mean that an employer can work somebody all day with no breaks? Technically, yes. Is it a good idea? Absolutely not. Is it a red flag that your employer would do that to you? Big time. So, yes, you can. If your employee does not want to work through take a break every 35 hours, they don't have to, but I would strongly encourage it. Just
And
like Victoria was saying.
yeah.
A
And
break is as good as a rest. It's
for sure. There was a question around antenna issues. They're close to the border and the cell jumps,
Yeah.
I guess.
Well, sometimes it jumps to the American side of the border.
Yeah, I don't know if we can solve
But
that.
your phone number should be the same phone number.
Yeah, I don't know if you have anything else to share, Pete, about that.
No, I think we're pretty close to the hour, so I'll say thank you very much to Victoria and to Dean again for this second webinar. It's been great. I hope everyone learned something.
Great.
Thanks for the opportunity, guys. It is an important thing, onboarding of young workers.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.